Hello, everybody. This is Anatoli Levine, and we are back again. So as we are not in 2025 yet, so unfortunately glitches happen. So effectively, our next presenter, Mark Roberts from NexTraq, was supposed to be live and with the presentation. However, technology, as I said, it's not 2025 yet. So technology was not cooperating on his end. So what we are going to do is we're going to do more or less a conversation. I don't want to even call it an interview, but more of a conversation. So thank you for joining us, Mark. And to begin with, if you can tell us a few words about your company and what does it do to make future of cars practical?
Yeah, sure. Firstly, thanks for allowing me the time this morning to do this. NexTraq is a company that focuses really on optimization of a vehicle's usage. Now, what we mean by that is really in the day-to-day work environment. So using technologies such as GPS, business intelligence, and tracking a variety of different sensors around the vehicle, we can infer many things. And from that, it allows you to really optimize the use. And if you think about having one of these things and what a drain on your finances it can be, a larger company that can operate many, many vehicles, it can be a significant drain on the income, revenue, and profitability if the asset isn't used correctly. So we provide a software as a service solution that allows people to maximize what they've got.
Okay. Great. Thank you. So, okay. I don't know. I really want to focus a little bit on the future. So with that, of course, there is a work which had a lot of publicity. There is a work by Google on creating a Google car. So what do you think, where is the Google car will be in 2025? Is that going to be a primary vehicle? Is that going to be something which everybody will gladly use? Or what do you think of that?
I'm not sure entirely that Google have got a clear idea of what the Google car would be in 2025, but in a shorter term, they're working on a whole series of technologies which they provide some very interesting spins and approaches on the way that a car operates and what that means to us in our day-to-day lives. I mean, so for one example, they had a fleet of I think it was 5 or 6 vehicles that they equipped with a very odd-looking contraption that they put on the top, like a spinning disc, if you would like. And what this was doing was literally reading the roads that were around it and the reference points. And it doesn't take a lot to extrapolate what they were comparing it to, obviously Google Maps and data that they've got. And so these things were literally driving themselves. And so for a period of time, that was actually a job in Google, sitting in a car and having the car drive you around. And I think they did a total of like 140, 150,000 miles driven without an accident, always getting to the location they were looking for. So one of the interesting areas Google's looking at, apart from integration of technology into the car, of the devices that we use and how we interact with the car, is just having the car take us where we need to go. So shifting away more from that pleasure of driving to making it purely a utilitarian, get me from A to B in the cheapest possible manner, in the safest possible way.
Right. Which is, I would see that as someone who really enjoys driving. I would really see that as a great enhancement. I would personally really like to have a car which will allow me to do both, because there are certain times when I really would much rather not be driving and much rather do something else. So that would be great to have this kind of combination. So that's a very interesting technology.
I think if you've got an option for it and the adaptive approach for it makes it interesting.
Right. Yeah, it's. I don't think all or nothing would be a great selling point for these kind of devices. Now, the cars are more and more becoming your communication hubs, so to speak, right? So there are all those elements which can be added now. Cars can really become your connected hub. They can connect to internet pretty much anywhere. They can deliver effectively live entertainment and so on. At the same time, I think this is destructive for the drivers. So what are you saying about this? What should be happening in this really a telematics, infotainment telematics / area?
Well, I think there's probably two aspects to it, and we tend to think about it as car manufacturers putting things into the vehicle that we can interact with to make it a more pleasurable experience, either from an entertainment perspective or maybe it's just climate. But there's also the outbound aspect that they're very much focused on, and I think we'll probably see some larger gains in this area rather than just integration of whichever device you have. I mean, everybody talks about an iPhone device at the moment, but going forward, of course, it probably is going to look significantly different. But the car's ability to actually communicate with other vehicles on the road, awful lot of time and effort from an R&D perspective is there. Is being put there. One of the key aspects that the R&D teams within a manufacturer are challenged with is safety. And so simple things like just being able to communicate speed, distance, and where the next nearest vehicle is, and then taking that as they start to extrapolate that out into what that could mean to us. You're now looking into social aspects of it and social networks. I mean, after all, that's really what it is. It just happens to be one that moves. And so being able to find people that you want to spend time with, linking up, similar interest groups, etc., are also other new exciting areas that the car manufacturers are looking to develop solutions for, which kind of takes it off into a different place. I mean, it really is, it's again, almost going back to the Google methodology or idea of it's a more utilitarian to get you from A to B to go do something when you're there. Today, we tend to think about driving, unless it's the commute, somewhat of an enjoyable process, if you enjoy driving, and the pleasure of that and the tactile experience of doing so. And indeed, some of the major brands out there have built reputations being on BMW, for example, the ultimate driving machine. A lot of the technologies going forward that are being examined are going to remove many aspects of that and put it in the hands of controlling technology that's embedded in the car while it's talking to others. And of course, as you mentioned, the availability of broadband pretty much everywhere. How you leverage that in a mobile fashion is bringing up some new exciting ideas. I noticed some research over at MIT recently. So apart from taking the Jetson car, the futuristic, overly futuristic approach, they were looking at some very real-world issues of people that need to take medication and how they behave in that car environment. Again, really focused on the safety aspect. So the guys over at MIT had come up with. It looks like, I think it was called AIDA, A-I-D-A, and it looks like a small blue-eyed robot that sits literally on your dashboard, and it just monitors you constantly. So if you're looking drowsy, or if you're looking like you need to take your medications, if you need reminding, if there's some way you're interacting with the vehicle that would give it cause for alarm, then a corrective action can take place. So I guess moving on from the telemedicine session that was happening previously, taking that kind of environment and moving it to a mobile environment and doing so with the aspect of safety, again, huge amount of R&D time, effort, and money is being spent there.
Okay. Yeah, this is great. I think some of this technology is outside of research labs. If I'm not mistaken, some of the either Mercedes or high-end, I think it's a Mercedes. They effectively have this technology, which is essentially, if you become drowsy and you start falling asleep, then the car will react to that. There's either a loud noise or something like that. I think there are cars effectively on the road today, which allow you to do that.
Yeah, it's a limited version of it with the Mercedes. It will remind you to take a coffee break or make a pit stop if you're looking as if you're drowsy. These guys have taken it on a lot further to actually monitor the human being much more closely and be able to react on many more parameters. But there's an interesting saying in the auto industry, in particular as it comes to Mercedes-Benz. I mean, if you want to know what's going to be in your next car 2-3 years away, look at the SL500. Whatever they've tried in there typically makes its way down to the subsequent ranges. That's shifted over the years, but very, very cutting edge. I think one of the probably more interesting aspects of the way cars are developed when you look at that is, we always assume that Mercedes developed everything that went into that car. There's just a reality as to how complicated car development is nowadays. And there's an entire ecosystem built up around this. So you have Tier 3 developers or suppliers that supply to Tier 2, that supply to the Tier 1, and then to the OEMs that actually assemble the vehicle and make sure that it works straight out of the gate. And by and large, that's why you see technology move in leaps and bounds. So if you went back maybe 5-10 years ago, the idea of a screen that was going to be in every single vehicle that would allow you to have Pandora, degree of internet access, and be your GPS device and your phone numbers, etc., was just foreign. The reason you see it in so many vehicles within a very, very short period of time is not because they're all literally on the same R&D schedule. Well, they kind of are, but it's driven by the Tier 3 and the Tier 2 and the Tier 1 suppliers into the automotive industry. So a lot of that innovation for vehicles that we drive in the future tends to come from the Tier 3s and the Tier 2s. And only the good ideas really make it to the top. You certainly see 7-speed gearboxes in every single car. There's a reason for that. They're not always manufactured by the OEM that's actually constructing the car itself.
That's a very, very interesting aspect. So all those Tier 2, Tier 3 guys, they need to scale. So once they have the technology ready, they definitely want everybody to deploy it. They don't want to make it exclusive. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense.
And that's why you see when you're looking at the future of where your vehicle is, it tends to happen in jumps and steps. And you'll suddenly see something on every single car. It's just a pure economy of scale, and they'll sell a version of it to every single OEM that's out there, and that gets incorporated into their platform.
Great. All right. So so far, what we talked about is that the cars are. I'll be careful using that, but let me just put it for the sake of it. The self-organizing networks kind of stuff. So now the cars know when they are and where they are, the distance and everything, as you said, they know what's going on. So to achieve this goal of let's say automated or semi-automated type of environment, do we need also intelligent roads, or it would be enough to have a satellite connection and just the cars being able to maybe talk to each other through broadband and so on, or do we need to make change in the road?
The conversation about the road seems to have lost a lot of favor recently, not least of which because of the billions and billions of dollars it would take for even a small metro area to do some of those upgrades. However, there were some recent ideas and innovations in that area that's brought the conversation to life again. I think probably the key thing that needs to happen more than anything, we're used to our cars being aware of things that are around them. So we've got sensors that allow us to back up, and we've got cameras that allow us to see what's behind, to the side, in front, etc. But it's very different to have a car that's actually communicating with another car. And defining a communication standard whereby you don't know the person in the car that's to your right-hand side or behind you or in front, and yet your vehicle is having a constant conversation with those other vehicles as to their speed, velocity, acceleration, etc. And what they're doing, what their intent is, what's going on inside the car, maybe even the GPS information of where it's next going to turn off. And sharing that information in a real-time fashion, combined with some of the work that Google's doing with being able to recognize where you are literally be able to plot a course by looking at specific landmarks that maybe you and I wouldn't necessarily recognize, but a part of the overall flow of where the car's going. It's really that combination of the two that I believe will provide us with some kind of future whereby you can actually put the car on autopilot and pick it up when you get off the freeway again, with sufficient warning, of course.
Okay. Okay. Makes sense. Yeah, so it looks like it's interesting, but it looks like the focus really shifted as all the abilities of the cars to communicate. Focus really now is shifted towards the cars. You don't need to really think so much into about the roads and stuff.
More than anything, yes, absolutely. That's where most of the thinking is going, and obviously a lot of the legislation as well that they're looking to introduce. That's all geared towards safety. It's rare that you find a piece of legislation that's geared towards it, making it a more enjoyable, exciting experience for us. It's all about dulling it down and making it an environment that's safe.
Right. So far we've been talking about very exciting stuff, but I think we need to touch just for the sake of our listeners, because just a technologically, future looks just outstanding. Now, let's bring in. Let's touch on all those people who want to have their hand on what our future is, and I'm talking about, I guess, government and the insurance companies. What is their impact on the actual future of the cars in 2025?
You know, it's going to be significant, I think, is the only honest answer. And probably the easiest way to draw a parallel is to look at what's going on in the commercial world. I mean, if you look at the National Safety Council, there was a study done in 2009, and they figured out that something like 28% of all accidents, this is North America only, but 28% of all accidents were attributed to a cell phone. They also did a follow-on study and showed that there was, 99% of those companies that were working actually had zero reduction in productivity after a total ban. So they're going to come after that, and quite rightly, we've got it in certain states, but I think you'll see more and more blanket approach as to what you can actually use within a vehicle, and there are actually proposed distraction guidelines on the table right now. There are many, but you can kind of boil it down into four key areas. The first one is you've got to reduce complexity and task length. So, if you're looking at your iPhone right now and trying to scroll through iTunes to find something, or Pandora on a station, the ability to do that is probably going to have some kind of legislation looking at it very, very carefully. You've also got to limit device operation to one hand. Now, most of the integrated solutions inside our cars and what we're looking at going forward, they do that anyway. But if you've got anything that requires two hands, such as texting, absolute no-no, unless you can kind of do it with just one hand. It's not complicated, and you can do it with so less than 2 seconds off the road. So what that means, if you're looking forward, if you've got to look down for more than 2 seconds, it's probably going to get banned in the future. And the other one is limiting the amount of manual inputs. So I think you're going to see more and more reliance upon voice or other tactile kind of approaches, but you won't have the ability to have very, very complex manual inputs required in any of the systems that you've got in the car or ancillary systems that are used in the car. So, items that will get disabled, and this isn't banned. I mean, they're talking about having it so it's actually disabled, will be anything visual or manual texting. All of that's going to go. Any web browsing, although I struggle to believe that somebody's doing that while they're running down the road. Social media, of course, manual GPS inputs, and a lot of these are gone already today, but that's a little different from it actually being legislated against, and then looking at how technology can put that back in our lives, because they're all things that we kind of need to be able to do. We just need to be able to do them in a more efficient manner, in a much more safe environment.
Right.
So you're going to see it. Yeah.
Very interesting. I can envision that it should be technologically possible to make your car to talk to your phone effectively and really limit what the phone can do. So this is all possible. The question is if the car manufacturers will follow that, but it's definitely very possible. That's interesting. I guess this is one of my last questions, or maybe it's the last question, and it's totally futuristic stuff being shown in the movies and everything, but will we see the flying cars on the road in 2025?
You know,
what do you think?
It sounds very appealing until you look at where people are thinking, and right now it's all about safety while we're on the road, and taking that concept and sticking it in the air. I'm not sure the NTSB are really going to be signing up for the fact that you'll have free access to the airways. And the reality is, you think these roads are busy? You know, try doing it in the air, where you need to leave a realistic distance in between one vehicle and another that's more than a car length. You know, the practicality of it, I mean, quite often in the car industry, you get imagination takes you in one direction, reality brings you back down to ground, and that's often in between those two is where you find the concept cars and the idea of all of those actually existing. Interestingly enough, one of the first ideas for the, you know, no conversation about the future of cars can take place without the Jetsons being mentioned. Now, interestingly enough, the Jetson car was actually manufactured or designed or imagined around it was a car that was built by Ford. And so for those trivia people out there, it's a great one. It's called the FX Atmos. And they actually designed the car in the Jetson car and the flying car based on the Ford FS Atmos. I think what you will see in 2025, beyond any shadow of a doubt, is more cars that drive themselves, park themselves, but also smaller cars. It just stands to reason we're going to have to head in that direction. GM are looking at much more of the personal kind of transporters. We think of Segway if we head in, allow our minds to wander in that direction. But these will be more of an all-weather, much more usable kind of vehicle that you'll be able to use on a day-in, day-out basis. But there's also some other interesting stuff out there, not necessarily the flying car, but you've got people like Audi who are actually looking to reinvent the wheel. And instead of driving on round black hoops of rubber, they're actually looking at spheres. So the car will be able to go sideways and head in all sorts of different directions at the same time for increased maneuverability around the city. So I think there's lots of interesting areas that we can head without having to head to the airways and risk life and limb every time that you have to fly into work.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Mark. This was great. I think this was a great discussion. Really appreciate your input, and thanks again.
All right, thanks again for your time. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye-bye.
Thank you.